The Visitor. A TLW Story. The shelter sits at the edge of town, where the asphalt gives way to gravel and the houses thin out like they're trying to escape something. It's the kind of place you'd drive past without noticing. A low-slung building the color of old concrete, surrounded by a chain-link fence that's seen better decades. Out back, there's a yard where the grass has been worn down to dirt in places, and a few trees offer shade that never quite reaches the kennels. I've worked here 6 years now, long enough to know the rhythm of the place. The morning chorus of barking that starts at dawn, the smell of bleach and kibble that never quite leaves your clothes, the way hope and heartbreak take turns at the front desk. Long enough to recognize the regulars, the families who come in wide-eyed and leave with a puppy, the college kids looking for a study companion, the lonely souls who just want something to need them. But I'd never seen anyone quite like the old man. He first appeared on a Tuesday in late September, when the light was starting to slant different and the air carried that first promise of cold. I was at the front desk doing intake paperwork for a surrendered cat when the door chimed, and I looked up to see him standing there in the entrance, backlit by the afternoon sun. He was tall but stooped, like time had bent him forward at the shoulders, wore a flannel shirt tucked into jeans that had been washed so many times they'd gone soft and pale. His face was weathered, deeply lined, the kind of face that speaks of decades spent outdoors. But it was his eyes that caught me, gray-blue and distant, like he was looking at something beyond what was actually there. "Help you?" I asked. He took off his cap, an old John Deere thing with a curved bill, and held it in both hands. "Just looking, if that's all right." "Sure, dogs are through that door, cats down the hall." He nodded, replaced his cap, and moved slowly toward the kennel area. His gait was deliberate, careful, like each step required thought. I watched him disappear through the door, then went back to my paperwork. We get browsers sometimes, people who aren't quite ready to commit but need to feel that possibility. Usually they're gone within 20 minutes. But an hour later, when I did my rounds to check water bowls and clean up accidents, the old man was still there. He was standing in front of one of the middle kennels, hands in his pockets, just looking. The dog inside, a border collie mix named Scout, sat at attention, returning his gaze with that particular intensity working dogs have. Neither of them moved. It was like watching two old soldiers recognize something in each other. "That's Scout," I said, approaching. "She's been here about 3 months. Owner died, no family wanted her. She's 6, house-trained, good with kids. Bit of separation anxiety, but nothing that couldn't be worked through." The old man didn't look at me. "She's not the one." "Not the one what?" "Not the one I'm looking for." Before I could ask what he meant, he turned and walked toward the exit, his boots making soft sounds on the concrete floor. The door chimed again, and he was gone. I stood there with my mop bucket, looking at Scout, who'd already lost interest and curled up on her blanket. Not the one I'm looking for. Strange thing to say. Most people said, not the right fit, or, we'll think about it. But not the one I'm looking for. That suggested he knew exactly what he was searching for, and that whatever it wasn't here yet. He came back the next day. Same time, late afternoon, when the shelter was quiet between the lunch rush and the after-work crowd. Same slow, deliberate walk to the kennels. This time I was in back giving medications, and Sandra, one of our volunteers, told me about him later. "That old guy from yesterday came back," she said, measuring out kibble into bowls. "Spent another hour looking at every dog. Didn't say much. Asked me if we'd gotten any new arrivals since yesterday." "What did you tell him?" "That we had a German Shepherd come in this morning. He looked at him for a long while, then just shook his head and left." I felt something turn over in my chest, something like curiosity mixed with concern. In 6 years, I'd seen a lot of unusual behavior. People who wanted only blue-eyed dogs, families who'd bring each of their 5 kids separately to make sure everyone agreed, a woman who'd spent weeks looking for a cat that felt right energetically. But this was different. This felt purposeful, urgent even, despite his slow pace and quiet manner. The old man came back on Thursday, and Friday, and Monday. By the second week, it had become routine. Between 3 and 4 in the afternoon, the door would chime, and he'd walk through with that same measured gait, that same distant look in his eyes. Sometimes he'd spend 2 hours going from kennel to kennel. Sometimes he'd stop at one dog for 20 minutes, studying it like he was trying to remember something important. Then he'd shake his head almost imperceptibly and move on. He never filled out an application, never asked about adoption fees or procedures, just looked and left. The staff started noticing. Carlos, who handled most of our dog training, mentioned him during a Thursday meeting. "You guys seen that old man who keeps coming in?" I tried to help him yesterday, asked what kind of dog he was looking for, and he just said he'd know when he saw it. Then he spent an hour in front of the mixed breed kennels, not saying a word. Maria, our vet tech, had seen him too. I watched him through the window in the medical bay. He was looking at the border collie, the one with the bad hip we're treating, and I swear I saw tears in his eyes. But then he moved on to the next kennel, like nothing happened. We started keeping an informal log, not in any official capacity, just curiosity. Tuesday through Friday, sometimes Saturday. 3 to 4 p.m., sometimes later. An hour minimum, often 2. Every dog, every kennel, every day. In the third week, I decided to approach him directly. He was standing in front of a kennel that held an older lab mix named Copper. The dog was on his feet, tail wagging slowly, pushing his gray muzzle through the bars. The old man had his hand extended, letting Copper sniff his fingers. "We're starting to wonder if maybe we can help you find what you're looking for," I said, keeping my voice gentle. "If you tell us what kind of dog—" "Golden," he said, still looking at Copper. "Female, about 8 or 9 years old now, maybe older. Time gets away from you." My heart started beating a little harder. "You're looking for a specific dog?" He nodded slowly. "Lost her, about 4 months back, July 17th. I was watching the news, story about those wildfires up north, and I looked away for maybe 5 minutes. When I looked back, the screen door was open. She was gone. Did you file a lost dog report?" Filed it everywhere. Police, animal control, every shelter in 3 counties, posted flyers, drove around every night for weeks calling her name until my voice gave out. Nothing. Nobody'd seen her. He finally looked at me, and the pain in those gray-blue eyes was startling in its nakedness. "But I know she's still out there. I know it." "What's her name?" "Daisy." He said it like a prayer, like saying it kept something alive. "Sir," I struggled for the right words. "I'm sorry, but we don't have a golden retriever here right now. We would have called you if one matching your description came in. That's what the lost dog report is for." "I know that." His voice was patient, like he was explaining something to a child. "But what if she ends up at a different shelter? What if someone else adopted her already? What if she's here but they called her something different and I missed her because I was looking for the wrong name?" "So you're checking every dog, every single one, every day." "Every day." We stood there in the concrete aisle between kennels, the sound of dogs settling down for the evening around us. Somewhere in the back, someone was running water. A door slammed. The fluorescent lights hummed their eternal song. "That's—" I searched for words. "That's dedication." "That's love," he corrected quietly. "That's what you do when you love something. You don't give up. You keep looking until you find it, or until you can't look anymore." He moved on to the next kennel then, and I let him go. That night, driving home with the windows down and the autumn air rushing through my car, I couldn't stop thinking about him. About the way he'd said July 17th, like the date was carved into him. About checking every dog, every day, looking for one face in hundreds. About love that doesn't calculate odds or listen to reason. I pulled over at a gas station and sat in my car, scrolling through our intake database on my phone. 4 months of records. Every dog that came through our doors since mid-July. I was looking for golden retrievers, female, middle-aged. We'd had 3. One had been reclaimed by her owner 2 days after intake. One had been adopted within a week. I remembered the family, a couple with twin boys who'd fallen in love with her immediately. The third was still technically in our system, but had been transferred to a rescue organization upstate that specialized in senior dogs. None of them had been named Daisy, but none of them had come in with names at all. Found as strays, no collars, no tags, no microchips. Just dogs who'd been lost and ended up with us, given temporary names by whatever intake worker happened to be on duty that day. The second one, the one adopted quickly by the family with twin boys, we'd called her Sunny. I remembered because one of the kids had said the name was perfect, that she was like sunshine. I pulled up the adoption records. The family's last name was Henderson. They lived about 40 minutes away, in one of those new developments full of identical houses with 2-car garages and basketball hoops in every driveway. I sat there with my phone in my hand, watching the numbers on the gas pump climb as someone filled their tank. Moths circled the overhead lights. A truck pulled in, engine diesel loud, then went quiet. It probably wasn't her. Sunny had been a golden, yes, and female, yes, and middle-aged, yes. But there were thousands of golden retrievers in the world. The odds that this one specific dog had ended up at our specific shelter, been adopted before the old man ever started looking, were astronomical. But what if? Those two words kept circling my mind like those moths around the lights. What if? I drove home, but I didn't sleep much that night. The old man came back the next day, of course, and the day after that. I watched him make his rounds, noting the way he'd pause at each kennel, the careful attention he'd give every dog. He'd look at their faces, their markings, the way they moved. He'd study them like he was trying to see through whatever name we'd given them to whatever truth lay beneath. On the Friday of that week, his fourth week visiting, I was helping a family meet a terrier mix in one of our greeting rooms when I saw him through the window. He was in front of a kennel that held a new arrival, a yellow lab we'd picked up just that morning. Young, maybe 2 years old, found running loose near the highway. He stood there for a long time, longer than usual. The dog was jumping against the kennel door, excited, tail whipping back and forth. Young dog energy, nothing like the calm demeanor you'd expect from a 9-year-old retriever. But the old man watched anyway, and I could see him wanting it to be her, wanting so badly for his search to be over that he was willing to consider even this impossible match. Then he shook his head, that same small motion I'd seen 100 times now, and moved on. Something broke open in my chest watching that. The hope and the disappointment happening so fast, they were almost the same thing. The way he kept going even after another door closed. When the family left with their new terrier, squealing with excitement and promising to send photos, I made a decision. I found him in the back section, the quiet kennels where we kept the dogs who needed a little more peace. The seniors, the shy ones, the ones still healing from whatever had brought them to us. "Sir," I said, "can I talk to you for a minute?" He turned, and I could see the weariness in his face. Not from the walking or the standing, though that was there too, but from the hoping, from lifting his heart up every single day only to set it back down unfound. "I think I might know something," I said. We sat in my office, which was really just a converted storage closet with a desk and 2 chairs and a file cabinet that didn't close right. I'd printed out everything I had on Sonny, the intake photo, the physical description, the adoption records. The old man held the paper in hands that trembled slightly. His eyes moved over the information, slowly, deliberately, the way they moved over everything. "Found on July 19th, he read aloud, 2 days after Daisy went missing. I know it's a long shot. 40 pounds. Daisy was maybe 35, but she'd been losing weight. I'd been meaning to take her to the vet. Sir, no collar, no microchip." He looked up at me. "I meant to get her chipped. I kept meaning to. But she never left my side, not in 8 years, and I thought I had time." The guilt in his voice was almost unbearable to hear. "This doesn't mean it's her," I said carefully. "Lots of golden retrievers come through shelters. The timing could be coincidence. The location, we found her about 15 miles from town, but dogs can travel when they're lost." "Can I see the picture?" I hesitated. The intake photo wasn't great, shot in poor lighting, the dog looking confused and scared, fur matted from being outside. You couldn't see much of her face, just a side profile and part of her body. "It's not a good photo," I warned. "Please." I turned my computer screen toward him and pulled up the digital file. The old man stared at it, and stared. His hands gripped the edge of my desk. I watched his jaw work, like he was chewing on something that wouldn't go down. "I can't tell," he finally said, and his voice cracked on the words. "I've looked at that face every day for 8 years, memorized every marking, every expression, and I can't tell if this is her. The angle's wrong, the lighting. She looks scared, and I've never seen her look like that. My Daisy was happy, always happy." "I'm sorry," I said. "I know this isn't... Where is she?" He looked at me suddenly, urgently. "This dog, Sonny, where is she now?" "She was adopted. Family named Henderson. They live... Can you give me their address?" "I can't do that. Privacy laws, liability. But I can reach out to them, explain the situation, ask if they'd be willing to meet with you." "When?" "I'll call them today, I promise." He nodded slowly, his eyes going back to the computer screen, to that grainy photo of a lost dog who might or might not be his lost dog. After a long moment, he stood up, carefully, like his joints needed convincing. "Thank you," he said, "for paying attention, for caring enough to look." "Of course. Most people don't," he said quietly. "Most people think it's just a dog. They tell you to get another one, like you can replace what you lost with something that looks similar enough. They don't understand that it's not about having a dog. It's about having that specific dog, that specific soul who knew you and chose you and became part of how you understood yourself." He put his cap back on, adjusting it carefully. "My wife died 2 years ago," he said, not looking at me. "Cancer, 18 months from diagnosis to gone. Daisy was her dog originally. Sarah found her at a shelter, actually. Different one, over in Millbrook. Brought her home one day and said, "This is Daisy, and she's family now." And she was. God, she was. His hands were shaking now. He gripped the back of the chair. Sarah spent her last months in a hospital bed we set up in the living room. Couldn't walk anymore. Barely talked. But every morning, Daisy would put her head on the edge of that bed, right where Sarah's hand was. And Sarah would rest her hand on Daisy's head, and they'd stay like that for hours, like they were having a conversation nobody else could hear. I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say that wouldn't be an insult to what he was offering. The day Sarah died, Daisy knew. She howled. I'd never heard her howl before, not once in 6 years. But she howled, and then she lay down next to the bed and wouldn't move. I had to carry her outside, hand feed her. She didn't eat right for weeks. He finally looked at me. So you see, it's not just that I lost a dog, I lost the last piece of my wife, the last thing that knew her the way I knew her, the last living connection to when we were whole. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. I can't lose her twice. The words hung in the small office, heavy and irrevocable. I'll call the Hendersons today, I said. I'll do everything I can. He nodded, put his hand on the doorknob, then paused. You know what the worst part is? I keep thinking about that night. July 17th. I was watching the news about fires, people losing their homes, their whole lives burning up. And I was sitting there feeling grateful that we were safe, that I had my house and my memories and Daisy. Feeling grateful. And while I was feeling grateful, she was walking out that door, and I didn't even notice. I was watching other people's disasters and missing my own. He opened the door. Let me know what they say. Then he was gone, and I was alone in my office with a phone number and a choice that felt much heavier than it should have. I called the Hendersons that evening after the shelter closed, and I could think clearly. The phone rang 4 times before a woman answered, child voices loud in the background. Mrs. Henderson, this is Amanda from Second Chance Animal Shelter. We spoke a few months ago when you adopted... Oh, God? Is something wrong with Sunny? Is she sick? No, nothing like that. She's fine as far as I know. I'm calling about something else. Something unusual. I explained the situation as delicately as I could. The old man, the lost dog, the dates that lined up, the photo that was too unclear to be certain, the widow's story. There was a long silence on the other end. Mrs. Henderson, we love her, she said finally. The boys, they've never bonded with anything the way they've bonded with Sunny. She sleeps in their room. They walk her every morning before school. She's part of our family now. I understand that, and I'm not suggesting, but you're saying she might not be ours to love. The words hit like a physical thing. I'm saying there's a possibility, a small one, that she belonged to someone else first, someone who never stopped looking, and that he deserves to know, one way or another. Another long silence. I could hear muffled conversation, like she'd covered the phone to talk to someone. Then she came back. What do you need from us? Just a meeting. Let him see her. If it's not his dog, he'll know, and you can go on with your life. If it is... I didn't finish the sentence, didn't know how to. When? Would Saturday work? Morning, maybe, at the shelter? Neutral territory. Saturday at 10, she said. But I'm telling you right now, I don't know what we'll do if it's her. His her. The boys... Her voice caught. I don't know how to explain this to them. Let's take it one step at a time, I said, though I had no idea what the steps were. Friday felt like the longest day of my life. I kept watching the door, expecting the old man to come in for his daily rounds. But he didn't show. For the first time in 4 weeks, the afternoon passed without his quiet presence in the kennels. It worried me more than I wanted to admit. That night, I drove past the address I'd found in our files. He'd filled out a lost dog report, with his information. Walter Brennan, Rural Route 7. The house was small, set back from the road, with a porch that sagged slightly and a yard that looked like it had once been carefully tended, but was now just getting by. A single light glowed in the front window. I almost stopped. Almost walked up to that door to tell him about Saturday, to make sure he was all right, to sit with him in whatever vigil he was keeping. But I didn't. Some solitudes are too private to intrude upon. Saturday morning came cold and gray, the kind of November day that makes you understand why animals hibernate. I got to the shelter early, started coffee, tried to prepare myself for whatever was about to happen. The Hendersons arrived first, pulling up in a silver minivan at 9:55. The dad got out first, tall, athletic-looking, wearing a fleece and jeans. Then the mom, the woman I'd spoken to on the phone. Then 2 boys, maybe 9 and 7, in matching blue jackets. And then The dog. She came out of the van like golden sunlight, tail wagging, tongue out, moving with that particular joy that some dogs carry, like it's their job to distribute happiness to the world. The boys held her leash together, and she walked between them with perfect ease, like they'd been a unit for years instead of months. My heart sank watching them. They were a family. Complete. Whatever happened in the next hour was going to hurt someone. "Thanks for coming," I said, meeting them at the door. "Where is he?" Mrs. Henderson asked, looking around the empty lobby. "Not here yet. Why don't you bring her into the greeting room? It's private, comfortable." We settled into the meeting room, the larger one we used for families. The boys sat on the floor with Sunny, who sprawled across their laps like she'd never met a personal boundary she respected. She was beautiful, I'd give her that. Golden coat shining even in the fluorescent light. Dark eyes warm and intelligent. Face still holding that puppy softness around the muzzle, even though she was clearly older. 10:05, 10:10, 10:15. "Maybe he changed his mind," Mr. Henderson said, hope creeping into his voice. Then the front door chimed. I excused myself and walked out to the lobby. The old man stood just inside the entrance, his cap in his hands again, looking smaller somehow than he had before, more fragile. "They're here," I said softly. He nodded but didn't move. "Mr. Brennan, Walter, you don't have to do this if you're not ready." "I've been ready every day for 4 months," he said. "I've been ready every minute of every day. But now that I'm here, now that she might be right through that door," he looked at me. "What if it's not her? What if I got my hopes up for nothing? Then you'll know you did everything you could. What if it is her?" That question hung between us like smoke. "Then we'll figure it out," I said, though I had no idea how. I led him to the meeting room, opened the door, and watched his face as he looked inside. The boys saw him first. They stood up, uncertain, moving slightly in front of Sunny like they could shield her from whatever this stranger represented. Mr. and Mrs. Henderson stood too, bodies tense, ready to protect what was theirs. But the dog. Sunny looked at the old man, and her tail stopped mid-wag. Her ears went forward. She made a sound, not quite a whine, not quite a bark, something in between. Something I'd never heard a dog make before. Walter Brennan stood frozen in the doorway. The dog pulled against the leash, still held by the younger boy. Pulled hard enough that the child stumbled forward. She was staring at the old man with an intensity that made my chest tight. "Sunny, sit," Mrs. Henderson said, voice sharp with anxiety. "Sit, girl." But Sunny didn't sit. She pulled again, and this time the boy let go of the leash. The dog crossed the room in 3 bounds and launched herself at the old man with enough force that he had to take a step back. She was jumping, whining, pressing against his legs, trying to climb him like he was a tree and she was going home. Her tail whipped so hard her whole back end swayed. She was making sounds, high, desperate sounds, like she was trying to speak and couldn't find the words. Walter Brennan dropped to his knees. "Daisy," he said. Just that. Just her name. And the dog, Sunny, Daisy, whoever she was, pressed herself against his chest, her head under his chin, her whole body trembling. The old man wrapped his arms around her and buried his face in her fur. His shoulders shook. The room was completely silent, except for the sounds of a man crying and a dog whimpering and 2 hearts trying to believe what they'd found. I looked at the Henderson family. The boys were crying too, clutching their mother. Mr. Henderson had his arm around his wife, and she had her hand over her mouth. On all their faces, the recognition of something undeniable, something that superseded ownership or law or what was fair. This dog knew this man, not as a friend, not as a former owner, as something essential, as home. Walter finally pulled back enough to look at her face. He held it in both hands, thumbs rubbing under her eyes, checking her over like he was looking for injuries on a battlefield. "You're thinner," he said, his voice wrecked. "And your paws, God, baby, what did you walk through? But it's you. It's really you." He pressed his forehead to hers. "I never stopped looking, not one single day. I told you I'd find you, didn't I? Didn't I tell you that?" The dog licked his face, his tears, like she was trying to clean away the grief he'd been carrying. "We didn't know," Mrs. Henderson said, and she was crying now too. "I swear we didn't know. There was no collar, no chip, no one claimed her. We thought—" "I know," Walter said, not looking away from Daisy. "I know you didn't. You took care of her. I can see that. She's healthy, she's loved. You did everything right. But she's yours," Mr. Henderson said quietly. Walter looked up at them then, and I saw him take in the boys, their tear-streaked faces, the way they were holding each other. She was my wife's, he said. My wife Sarah. And when Sarah died, Daisy was all I had left of her. All I had left of the life we'd built. Losing her, his voice broke. It nearly killed me. These 4 months I've been... He stopped, shook his head. But I see what she's been to you, too. We love her, the younger boy said, his voice small. We love her so much. Walter looked at the boy for a long moment, then at Daisy, who was still pressed against him, still trembling, still making those sounds that were neither words nor silence, but something in between. I can see that, he said finally. What do we do? I asked, because someone had to say it out loud. What's the right thing here? No one answered, because there wasn't a right thing. There was only what was least wrong. Walter stood slowly, with effort. Daisy stood with him, leaning against his legs. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet, opened it. From one of the slots, he extracted a photograph, worn soft at the edges from handling. This was Sarah, he said, holding it out to the boys. And that's Daisy with her. They were best friends. In the photo, a woman sat in a garden, smiling at the camera. Next to her, a younger, healthier Daisy, mouth open in what looked exactly like a smile. The resemblance between the dog in the photo and the dog in the room was unmistakable. She's pretty, the older boy said. She was beautiful, Walter agreed, inside and out, and she loved this dog more than almost anything. When she got sick, really sick, Daisy never left her side, not once. They'd spend hours together, not doing anything, just being together. Sarah would talk to her. I don't know what she said. Nobody does. But Daisy would listen like she understood every word. He put the photo back in his wallet. After Sarah died, I was supposed to take care of Daisy. That was the deal. Sarah rescued her, loved her, and when Sarah was gone, it was my job to keep her safe, to give her the life Sarah would have wanted her to have. His voice was steady now, resolved. But I failed. I let her slip out that door. I let her get lost. And now, here you are, and you've been doing what I should have done, giving her a home, giving her love, giving her a family. Walter, I said carefully, what are you saying? He looked down at Daisy, who looked up at him with eyes that held everything and nothing. Just presence, just devotion, just that particular loyalty that dogs carry like some people carry breath. I'm saying that I found her, he said. I needed to know she was alive. I needed to know she was okay. I needed to not spend the rest of my life wondering and hoping and imagining her scared and alone. But now I know. She's here. She's healthy. She's loved. She has a family who wants her. No, Mrs. Henderson said suddenly. No, you can't. We can't. She looked at her husband desperately. Mr. Henderson stepped forward. Sir, we understand this must be incredibly difficult, but legally, she's your dog. If you want her back, we can't stop you. We'd never try to keep someone's dog from them. I know that, Walter said, but here's what I also know. I'm 73 years old. I live alone in a house that's too big and too quiet. I spend my days doing nothing much and my nights remembering. I can give Daisy a home, sure, food and water and a warm place to sleep. But these boys, he looked at them, these boys can give her a life. They can run with her and play with her and fill her days with the kind of joy that dogs are supposed to have. They can give her what she deserves, what Sarah would have wanted her to have. But you love her, the younger boy said. You looked for her every single day. I did, and I do, and I always will. Walter knelt down again, bringing himself to the boy's level. But love isn't just about holding on. Sometimes love is knowing when to let go, when to choose what's best for someone else, even when it breaks your heart. Daisy pressed herself between Walter and the boys, her body bridging them, like she was trying to hold everyone together. I can't take her from you, Walter said to the boys. I won't, but I'm asking for something, if you'll give it to me. I'm asking if maybe sometimes I could visit. Not all the time, just now and then. Just to see her and know she's happy, to tell her about her mom, to remember together. The boys looked at their parents. Mrs. Henderson was crying openly now, mascara running. Mr. Henderson had his jaw clenched tight. Every week, the older boy said suddenly, you can come every week. You can come to our house and see her whenever you want. And you can tell us about Sarah, the younger one added, about Daisy's mom. So we know her too. Walter closed his eyes, and tears leaked out from under his lids. He reached out and put a hand on each boy's shoulder. Deal, he whispered. We stood there in that small room, all of us, with a dog that had 2 names and 2 families and enough love to remake the world. Outside, November wind rattled the windows. Inside, something fundamental had shifted. Not resolved exactly, but transformed. The shape of loss changing into something that could be carried. There's paperwork, I said. Because someone had to return us to the practical. We need to update the microchip information, make sure everything's legal and clear. We'll get her chipped, Mrs. Henderson said quickly, this week, with both our information and Walter's. So if she ever gets lost again, she couldn't finish. She won't, Mr. Henderson said firmly. We'll make sure of it. Walter spent another 20 minutes with Daisy. The boys showed him the tricks they'd taught her. Sit, stay, shake, roll over. She performed them all perfectly, glancing between the boys and Walter, like she was checking to make sure everyone was watching. Walter told them about her favorite toy, a rubber chicken that squeaked, and how she used to sleep at the foot of the bed but would creep up to the pillow by morning. How she loved swimming but hated baths. How she could hear a cheese wrapper from 3 rooms away. The boys listened like he was telling them secrets, like every detail was a treasure. When it was time to go, Walter stood at the shelter door and watched them load Daisy, Sonny, into the van. She looked back at him through the window and he raised his hand in a small wave. See you next Saturday, Mrs. Henderson said. Come for lunch, 1 o'clock. I'll be there, Walter promised. The van pulled away and we watched it disappear down the road. Walter stood there long after it was gone, his hand still slightly raised, like he was holding on to something invisible. You did a good thing, I said finally. I did the only thing I could live with, he corrected. Then he looked at me. Thank you. For paying attention, for caring, for making the call. I'm glad it worked out. So am I. He put his cap back on. So am I. He walked to his truck, an old Ford, blue paint fading to primer in places, and climbed in. Started the engine. But before he pulled away, he rolled down the window. You know what Sarah used to say? She'd say that love is the only thing you can give away completely and still have more of. That it doesn't divide when you share it. It multiplies. He smiled, small and sad and genuine. I never really understood that until today. Then he drove away, and I stood in the parking lot of Second Chance Animal Shelter, watching the empty road and understanding something about Grace that I hadn't understood before. The old man came back to the shelter the following Tuesday, same time as always, 3:30 in the afternoon. But this time, he didn't go to the kennels. He found me at the front desk, doing intake for a surrendered terrier. Thought you'd be at the Hendersons, I said. That's Saturday, but I figured my routine's pretty well established here. Didn't want you to think I'd forgotten about you all. You can take a break from visiting, you know. You found her. I know. He leaned against the counter, looking back toward the kennels. But there are a lot of dogs back there. A lot of daisies waiting for their Walters to come looking. Maybe I can help. If you need volunteers. I felt something warm spread through my chest. We always need volunteers. Good. He straightened up. I've got afternoons free, and experience with dogs, and a lot of time to make up for. Make up for? 4 months I spent looking for one dog. That's 4 months I could have been helping others. Seems like I should balance the books. I pulled out a volunteer application form and handed it to him. Fill this out. I'll get you set up with Carlos for training. He took the form, glanced at it, then looked back up at me. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why'd you do it? Why'd you make that call? You didn't have to. Could have just let things stay the way they were. I thought about it, about the easy answer and the true answer, and how sometimes they're different things. I work here because I believe every animal deserves a chance, I said finally. But I guess I also believe every person looking for their animal deserves a chance too. You were looking so hard, and you never gave up, and that kind of love... I stopped, started again. That kind of love deserves to be honored, even when it's complicated, maybe especially when it's complicated. Walter nodded slowly. Sarah would have liked you. I think I would have liked her too. He took the application form to one of the chairs in the lobby and sat down to fill it out. I watched him for a moment, bent over the paper, writing carefully in the cramped spaces provided. An old man who'd lost everything and found it and lost it again, and somehow came through still believing in second chances. The front door chimed. A young couple walked in, holding hands, looking nervous and excited and ready to change their lives. Welcome to Second Chance, I said. How can I help you? And the work went on. That Saturday, I drove past the Henderson house on my way to run errands. It wasn't really on my way, but I made it on my way. I didn't stop, just slowed down as I passed. In the front yard, I could see them, the 2 boys and Daisy, playing some kind of chase game. And sitting on the porch steps, watching, was Walter. Mrs. Henderson came out with something, lemonade maybe, or iced tea, and handed him a glass. They stood there talking while the boys and the dog ran in circles, everyone's joy visible even from the road. It looked like family. Complicated family, blended family, family made from broken pieces, but family nonetheless. I drove on. The old man kept his volunteer schedule religiously. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday mornings before his lunch at the Hendersons. He'd come in, sign the log, and spend hours in the kennels, walking dogs, cleaning runs, socializing the fearful ones, sitting patiently with the ones who'd been let down too many times to trust quickly. The other volunteers took to him. Carlos said Walter had a gift, something about his quiet patience that made even the most anxious dogs settle. Maria mentioned that he'd started bringing his own. Treats, homemade dog biscuits that smelled like peanut butter and made every dog in the place lose their minds. One Thursday afternoon in December, I found him sitting on the floor of a kennel with a pit bull named Rocco. The dog had been with us for 6 months, returned twice for being too energetic. He was currently pressed against Walter's side, dead asleep, snoring softly. "You're going to spoil him," I said from the doorway. "Good. He deserves spoiling." Walter ran his hand along Rocco's side. "So many of them do. How's Daisy?" He smiled. "She's good. Getting spoiled there, too. The boys signed her up for some kind of dog sports class. Agility, I think it's called. She's apparently very good at jumping through hoops. Sarah would approve. Sarah would love it. She always said Daisy needed a job. Turned out her job is making 2 boys happy. Could be worse. You miss her? Every day." He said it simply without self-pity. "But I see her every week, and when I'm here, working with these guys," he gestured around at the kennels, "I'm doing something Sarah would be proud of. So I guess I'm still taking care of her dog. Just not in the way I expected." Rocco shifted in his sleep, pressing closer to Walter. "He likes you," I observed. "I like him too." "The Pattersons are coming back tomorrow to meet him again. 3rd time. I think they might actually adopt him this round." "They should. He's a good boy. Just needed someone to see past the energy to the heart underneath." We sat in companionable silence, watching the dog sleep, listening to the sounds of the shelter around us. Distant barking, doors opening and closing, the hum of fluorescent lights, the rhythm of a place where endings and beginnings happened every single day. "Can I tell you something?" Walter said after a while. "Of course. I used to think that loving something meant holding on to it, keeping it close, keeping it safe, never letting it go. Sarah and I, we built this whole life together, and when she got sick, I held on so tight. Like, if I could just love her enough, she'd stay. Like the force of my wanting could overcome biology." He paused, looked down at his hands, weathered, spotted with age, still steady. "But she left anyway. And then Daisy left. And I thought, that's it. That's what I get for loving. Everything leaves. Everything ends. Why even try?" Rocco stirred, opened one eye, then closed it again, content. "But then I came here, and I watched you all loving these dogs even though you know that most of them will leave. They'll get adopted, go to new homes, forget you ever existed, and you love them anyway. You feed them and walk them and teach them to trust again, and then you hand them over to strangers and watch them drive away, over and over and over." He looked at me then. "That takes courage, real courage, to love. Something knowing you're going to lose it, to give everything you have to something temporary, to believe that the love itself is worth it, even when it ends." "That's the job," I said, but my throat was tight. "It's more than that. It's proof that love doesn't stop being real just because it stops being convenient. That choosing to care, even when it costs you, even when it hurts, that's what makes us human. That's what makes life worth living." He stood up carefully, trying not to wake Rocco, but failing. The dog scrambled to his feet, tail wagging, ready for whatever came next. "I spent 4 months looking for something I'd lost," Walter said. "Turns out what I needed to find was something different, not the past, not what used to be, but the courage to keep loving even after loss, to believe that new love doesn't erase old love, it honors it." He opened the kennel door, let Rocco bound out into the corridor. "Thank you," he said, "for giving an old man a second chance." "Walter, no, really, thank you, for seeing someone who was lost and helping him find his way home." He headed toward the play yard with Rocco, leaving me standing in the empty kennel, blinking back tears. Winter came, and with it the holidays. The shelter put up lights, played carols, held adoption events where every dog wore a festive bandana. Walter showed up through all of it, through the ice storms and the bitter cold, through Christmas and New Year, through the dark months when everything felt harder. He brought in photos one day in January, the boys and Daisy at a dog show, Daisy with a blue ribbon. The whole family together, everybody smiling. "She won her category," he said, showing anyone who'd look. Fastest time in intermediate agility. The boys were beside themselves. "You must be proud," Maria said. "Prouder than if I'd won it myself." He tucked the photos back in his wallet, next to the old picture of Sarah. Sarah would have burst. Rocco got adopted by the Pattersons. Carlos helped place 3 of his training project dogs. The shelter had its best adoption rate in years. And through it all, Walter kept showing up. One afternoon in February, a woman came in, carrying a golden retriever puppy, maybe 4 months old, squirming and licking and radiating that particular puppy chaos. "Found him wandering on Route 7, she said. "No collar, no chip that I could find with my scanner. Somebody must be looking for him." I took the puppy, a boy, healthy, friendly, and started the intake process. Behind me, I heard Walter's voice. "You'll find his family," he said to the woman. "People don't stop looking when they love something. They keep searching until they find it, or until they can't search anymore." "I hope you're right," the woman said. "I am. Trust me." She left, and Walter came to look at the puppy, now contained in a temporary kennel, while we waited out the mandatory stray hold period. "He'll be okay," Walter said, more to the puppy than to me. "Somebody's looking for you, and if they don't find you, somebody else will. You'll be okay." The puppy wagged its entire back end and tried to lick Walter's fingers through the bars. "They always are, aren't they?" I said. "Eventually, the ones who end up here, they always find their way to okay." "With help," Walter agreed. "With people who care enough to keep trying, to make phone calls and check databases and drive to strangers' houses to reunite families. Yeah, with that kind of help, they make it to okay." He straightened up, grimacing slightly. "You all right?" I asked. "Fine, just old. Knees remind me every day." He smiled. "But I've got at least a few more years of this in me. These dogs aren't going to socialize themselves." "We're lucky to have you." "I'm the lucky one," he said. "I came here looking for something I'd lost. Turns out what I found was something I needed more: purpose, connection, a reason to get up in the morning that wasn't just survival." The front door chimed, a family with young kids looking to adopt. Walter waved at them, then headed back to the kennels. "I'll work with the shepherd in 12, he called back. "She could use some confidence building." "Thank you, Walter." He raised his hand in acknowledgement and disappeared through the door. I stood there at the front desk, watching the family approach, ready to help them find whatever they were looking for. Behind me, I could hear the dogs, the constant chorus of barking and whining and waiting. Each of them a story, each of them someone's beginning or middle or end. And somewhere in there, moving quietly between kennels, was an old man who'd learned that losing something doesn't mean you stop loving it, that finding something doesn't mean you have to hold it, that sometimes the greatest act of love is trusting enough to let go. Outside, February rain turned to snow. Inside, life went on. Dogs waiting for families, families waiting for dogs. Volunteers showing up day after day to bridge the gap between need and fulfillment. All of it imperfect, all of it worth it. I turned to the family at the counter. "Welcome to Second Chance," I said. "Let me tell you about all the wonderful dogs we have." And the work continued, the way it always does, the way it always will. As long as there are people who care enough to keep looking, to keep hoping, to keep believing that every soul, human or animal, deserves to be found. And sometimes, in the process of looking for what we've lost, we find exactly what we needed all along. Not a replacement, not a consolation prize, but something new and equally precious. A different kind of love, a second chance. That's what second chances are, after all. Not getting back what you lost, but discovering that you can still love, still hope, still open your heart to something new without betraying what came before. Walter taught me that. Daisy taught him. And the endless parade of dogs moving through our shelter keeps teaching us all. That love multiplies when you share it, that holding on isn't the same as holding close, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let go, and that no matter how lost you are, someone, somewhere, is still looking for you, still hoping, still believing you're out there, waiting to be found. All you have to do is keep walking, keep searching, keep showing up at shelters every single day until you find what you're looking for, or until what you're looking for finds you. Because in the end, we're all just looking for the same thing: connection, purpose, proof that our love matters, evidence that what we've lost isn't gone. It's just transformed into something we couldn't have imagined when we first began searching. The old man found his dog, but more than that, he found himself, found proof that his heart could still open, that his capacity for love hadn't died with his wife, that he still had something to give and something to gain. And maybe that's the real story, not the lost dog who got found, but the lost man who found his way back to living, who discovered that endings can become beginnings, that second chances come in unexpected forms, that sometimes what we're really looking for isn't what we think we're looking for at all. It's just love, in whatever form it takes, in whatever way it finds us. And when it does, when we're finally reunited with what we've been searching for, the only real question is, what will we do with it? Will we hold so tight we strangle it? Or will we love it enough to let it become what it needs to be? Walter chose the latter, and in doing so, he taught us all something about grace. The snow continued to fall outside. Inside, the shelter hummed with life and hope and the quiet courage of people who show up every day to care for the lost until they're found. And somewhere across town, in a house with a yard and 2 boys and 1 very special golden retriever, a family sat down to dinner, together, complete, held together by a love that was big enough to include everyone, the living, the dead, the lost, and the found. That's enough. That has to be enough because that's everything. End